Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Are you out of your mind? You swapped the Château Margaux. The shout split the room so cleanly that even the soft jazz seemed to flinch. A chandelier glowed above linen-white tablecloths and polished silver. The kind of dining room where whispers were currency and eye contact was a negotiation. At the center aisle stood Richard Harlan, 43, restaurant manager, crisp in a black vest, jaw tight, eyes burning with the confidence of a man used to being obeyed. Across from him stood Naomi Carter, 32, in a black server's uniform and a white apron tied neatly at her waist. Hair in a smooth bun. Shoulders squared. A tray balanced at her hip, perfectly level, as if her body had decided it would not tremble for anyone. Richard snatched the bottle from the table already opened, a deep red ring staining the inside of the glass lip. It wasn't just wine in his hand. It was status. A label the room recognized like a family name. "You think you can make me look stupid in front of these people?" he said, loud enough for every table to hear. "Do you know what that bottle costs?" Naomi kept her voice calm, American clear, steady. "I poured what was ordered on the ticket. If something's wrong, we can check with the sommelier and the receipt." Richard's mouth twisted into a smile that wasn't humor. It was permission. "Oh, she wants to check," he mocked, turning to the guests like they were a jury. "You hear that? She wants to check." A few people laughed, thin, nervous laughter, the kind that begged the powerful man to stay pleased. A phone lifted slightly above a centerpiece, camera already rolling like instinct. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Naomi Carter. Naomi felt the room's temperature shift, not the air, but the mood. That familiar tilt where luxury stopped being beautiful and started being dangerous. She could smell truffle butter and expensive perfume, and underneath it, the quiet comfort of people who believed consequences were for other classes. Near the service station, the sommelier, Ethan Rowe, 38, stood rigid, hands clasped. His eyes flicked to the bottle, to the label, to Richard's grip. Ethan knew the cellar inventory. He knew the pouring protocol. He also knew who signed his paycheck. Fear sealed his mouth shut. Richard stepped closer, invading Naomi's space like he owned the oxygen. "You don't get to talk back," he said, voice low, sharp. "You serve. That's your job. Nothing else." Naomi swallowed once. Not from shame, control. "Sir," she said evenly, "please don't do this." That single word, please, didn't soften him. It made him feel taller. He raised the bottle above her head, arm extended, performing for the room. For the cameras. For the people who needed to see someone put in her place to feel safe in theirs. A pause. A held breath. Then the wine poured. Dark red streamed down Naomi's hairline, slid over her temple, traced her cheek, and dripped onto her collar. It stained her uniform like a mark the room wanted to remember. Gasps scattered. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another voice, too late, tried to laugh and died when nobody joined. Naomi did not flinch. She stood still, tray still level, eyes forward, so composed that the humiliation didn't land the way Richard wanted. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was restraint. And that kind of restraint unsettled people who only respected noise. Richard exhaled like he'd just restored order. He turned to the guests, smiling. "There," he said. "Now we can all get back to dinner." But the room didn't return. Because at the back table, a chair slid softly across the floor. A man stood. Not rushing. Not shouting. Just rising with the weight of authority, like the air itself recognized him. A couple of guests went pale before they even understood why. Naomi's gaze shifted for the first time. And Richard, still holding the bottle, finally realized the silence had changed. It wasn't admiration anymore. It was warning. Wine continued to drip, slow, deliberate drops off Naomi's jaw and onto the white apron tied around her waist. Each stain looked darker against the spotless dining room, like someone had taken a marker to the idea of class and drawn a line through it. Richard's smile twitched, trying to decide whether the silence behind him was respect or something else. He turned his head. The man at the back table had fully risen now. Mid-40s, broad-shouldered, suit cut clean, expression calm in a way that wasn't gentle. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His stillness carried the authority the room had tried to steal from Naomi, only his authority was recognized. A gray-haired attorney type lowered his glass too fast. A couple at the corner table stopped chewing. Someone slid their phone down as if the camera had suddenly become evidence. Victor Leclerc, 55, owner of the restaurant and patron saint of its polished reputation, sat upright in his chair. His eyes narrowed, not with concern for Naomi, but with calculation. The kind of man who always knew where the exits were, even in a room full of chandeliers. Richard turned back to Naomi, trying to reclaim the stage. "You're done for tonight," he snapped. "Go to the back. Clean yourself up. And don't you dare make a scene." Naomi blinked once, wine stinging near her hairline. She kept her tray level. "I didn't make a scene," she said quietly. Richard leaned in, voice low, cruelly polite. "You don't get to decide that." Naomi looked past him, past the smirk, past the bottle, toward the faces that had watched, laughed, recorded, and then pretended to be shocked. The dining room felt smaller now, like luxury was just a tight box people paid to sit inside. She drew a careful breath. "I want an incident report," she said. "And I want the footage preserved. All cameras. Right now." Richard's eyes narrowed. "Footage?" "Yes," Naomi replied, steady. "Preserve it." Ethan flinched at the request. He knew what the cameras had seen. He also knew who had access to the office. Richard scoffed. "You don't get to demand anything in my restaurant." Naomi's phone slid into her palm with quiet certainty. She typed 2 words to a contact with no emoji, no nickname, just a name. "Now." At the back of the room, the man in the tailored suit began walking down the aisle. Not fast. Not slow. Measured. Richard noticed and lifted his chin, defensive. "Sir," he called out, loud enough for the whole room, "this is an internal matter. Return to your table." The man didn't stop. And Richard, desperate to retake control, did what bullies always do when they feel their power slipping. He doubled down. He pointed at Naomi's stained apron like it was proof of guilt. "Look at her," he announced. "Standing there like she didn't just sabotage a $1,000 bottle." A man in a navy blazer chuckled, too loud, too eager. "Unbelievable," he said, shaking his head like Naomi had offended him personally. Another guest muttered, "These places hire anybody now." Naomi's fingers tightened around the tray. "I didn't sabotage anything," she said. "You poured that on me. In front of everyone." Richard's lips curled. "And I'll do worse if you keep running your mouth." Victor took a step forward, hands raised slightly, trying to appear reasonable without appearing guilty. Richard, we need to handle this. No, Richard snapped. We handle it now. He turned toward the host stand, voice hard. Security. Two men in black, both over 30, earpieces in, moved in from the edge of the dining room. Not police. Comfort keepers. Problem removers. Naomi saw them coming and didn't step back. I'm not leaving until you file an incident report, she said. And until the camera footage is preserved. Richard laughed. Sweetheart, you don't get to demand evidence. One of the security men reached for Naomi's elbow, not rough yet, just practiced. Ma'am, you need to come with us. Naomi turned her head slightly. Do not touch me, she said, voice low and steady. You're not law enforcement. The man hesitated because phones were still out now, and the room had started watching like jurors instead of diners. Richard leaned into the moment, hungry for a new weapon. Fine. Let's talk about theft. The word hit the room like a match. Naomi's expression stayed calm, but her eyes sharpened. That's a lie. Richard raised his voice. Take her to the back, he snapped at security. Check her belongings. Victor's face tightened, an almost invisible warning. This had crossed into legal territory. Naomi's jaw set. If you try to search me or my belongings without my consent, she said, you're breaking the law. Richard leaned closer, contempt dressed as professionalism. Breaking the law, he whispered. You think you're somebody. Naomi held his gaze. I know I'm somebody. The man in the suit, now close enough to cast a shadow on the white cloth, stopped 3 feet from Richard. Not respectful distance. Confrontational distance. Richard sneered, trying to reclaim oxygen. Who are you supposed to be? The man's voice was calm enough to make the room colder. Stop, he said. One word. No shouting. No threats. A command that didn't need volume. Richard's mouth opened, ready to fight it, when the front door swung wide. Cold air rushed in. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, both over 30, scanning the room with professional focus. A third figure followed them in, and the dining room seemed to tighten around his presence. Phones that had been raised for entertainment lowered in a hurry. Richard snapped, thinly, What is this? One officer, Daniels, spoke flatly. We received a call regarding an assault. Ma'am, are you the complainant? Naomi didn't answer immediately. The man in the suit did. Yes, he said. My wife was assaulted. My wife. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't performed. It was stated like a fact the room should have respected before it ever needed to be announced. Richard's posture shifted, still upright, but less certain. Wife, he repeated, as if the word itself offended his script. Daniel's gaze sharpened. Sir, your name? The man turned just enough for the chandelier light to catch his face cleanly. Marcus Carter, he said. Judge Marcus Carter. The kind of judge the city feared, not for noise, but for how little he cared about money and excuses. The effect was immediate. A woman near the window went pale. A man in a gray suit stiffened, eyes darting away like he'd just spotted an old enemy. Even Victor's expression faltered just a fraction before he tried to rebuild it. Richard blinked hard. Judge, he managed, and it came out cracked. Marcus didn't look at him like a man eager to crush. He looked at him like a case file. You poured wine on her, Marcus said, controlled. In front of witnesses. On camera. Then you ordered security to put hands on her and suggested searching her belongings without consent. Richard tried to regain volume. She ruined a bottle. She. Marcus lifted a hand, not theatrically, just to stop noise. Let them speak, he said, nodding toward the officers. Answer their questions. Daniels turned to Naomi, voice softer. Ma'am, tell me what happened. Naomi didn't dramatize. She didn't plead. She stated facts like they belonged to her. He accused me of switching a bottle, she said. I asked to verify the order. He poured wine on me. Then he called security and accused me of theft. Daniel's eyes moved to Richard. Is that accurate, sir? Richard's lips parted. The guests were no longer his audience. They were his witnesses. Victor stepped forward, voice coated in charm. Officer, we can resolve this privately. Marcus's gaze snapped to Victor, and the charm wilted. This isn't private, Marcus said. It's public. That's the point. Then Marcus looked to Daniels, careful, disciplined. Officer, I'm not directing your work. I'm requesting standard procedure, Marcus said. Once the statement is taken, I'll step back. I'm here as her husband, not the bench. Daniels nodded once, appreciating the boundary. Marcus continued, voice even. Preserve all security footage immediately. Document chain of custody. Daniels turned to Victor. Who has access to the camera system? Victor hesitated too long. The office manager. Anne. Richard. And me. Daniels wrote it down. Okay. I'm requesting voluntary consent to preserve and export that footage right now. If you refuse, I'll move to secure a warrant to preserve the DVR. Victor swallowed. You have my consent, he said. I'll sign whatever release you need. Richard snapped, desperate. This is private property. Daniels cut him off. Sir, step back. Richard froze. Smaller, he obeyed. In the back office, the illusion of fine dining cracked. Daniels and his partner documented everything, timestamps, access logs, the exact moment footage was copied to an evidence drive. Victor stood there as he signed the consent release, watching evidence leave his control. The DVR console hummed quietly, indifferent to power. Meanwhile, Ethan, his sommelier, stood with an officer near the cellar access, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were pale. His eyes darted to the bottle, then to Richard, then to Naomi. Marcus noticed him from a distance. You're the sommelier, Marcus said, direct. Ethan nodded. Yes. Marcus asked the question like a scalpel. Did she pour the wrong wine? Ethan's eyes flicked to Victor. Then to Richard. Then back to Naomi, wine dried along her cheek like proof. I don't know, Ethan said, and the lie sounded like it hurt him. Daniels stepped closer. Sir, I'm asking you as a witness. If you know something, now is the time. Victor tried to glide in with control. Ethan, why don't you? Don't tell him what to say, Daniels warned. That did it. Ethan's shoulders sagged, like something inside him finally refused to carry the weight. That bottle, Ethan said, voice low, the way it was handled, it doesn't match our protocol. Richard's head snapped up. What are you doing? Ethan swallowed hard. High-end bottles at that price are logged. Pulled from the cellar under verification. Cork retained. Serial and invoice recorded. He looked at Naomi. She asked to verify. That was the correct step. Victor's smile disappeared. And, Ethan added, voice shaking but moving forward anyway, we've had discrepancies. Inventory issues. Bottles that don't reconcile. A murmur rippled through the dining room, different from gossip. This sounded like crime. Daniel's pen paused. Discrepancies how? Ethan's gaze fell. High-end bottles missing. Or replaced with something cheaper. Labels swapped. Richard lunged half a step. You lying little. Daniels raised a hand. Sir. Step back. Richard froze. Daniels looked to Naomi again, voice steady. Ma'am, do you want to press charges for the assault? Naomi didn't hesitate. Yes, she said. Naomi's phone buzzed once. A single message from her compliance lead, confirmed. Richard tried to laugh it off, but his voice came out thin. You think you can do this to me? Naomi finally set the tray down. Slowly, she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a slim black card case, too clean, too deliberate for a server's uniform. She placed a business card on the nearest table, right under the chandelier light. Victor's eyes dropped to it. His face tightened like a man seeing his own obituary. Richard squinted. What is that? Naomi's voice didn't rise. The reason your funding just died. Victor swallowed. Naomi, please. Naomi lifted her phone and typed one word with surgical calm. Proceed. Then she looked straight at Victor. The deal is cancelled. Effective immediately. Your compliance review becomes a full investigation. The dining room didn't gasp this time. It went quiet because everyone finally understood the same thing at once. They hadn't been watching a waitress get humiliated. They'd been watching an entire establishment fail a test it didn't know it was taking. By midnight, the story wasn't confined to chandeliers anymore. A clip Richard's shout, the bottle raised, the red cascade over Naomi's face hit social media and spread like gasoline finding flame. The restaurant's name trended before dawn. People replayed it in silence, then with sound, then with anger that finally had proof. Inside the building, the mood turned procedural, cold and methodical. Daniels requested witness info. Names. Numbers. Occupations. People who had laughed earlier now stared at their plates like porcelain might hide them. Some tried to slip out, but the law didn't care about their inconvenience. Richard paced near the host stand, jaw clenched. This is a setup, he hissed. She's lying. This is extortion. Daniels approached with measured steps. Sir, you're being detained for investigation of assault. We're also reviewing allegations related to fraud. Richard barked a laugh. Fraud? Because of wine? Daniels didn't answer sarcasm. He read facts. Clean. Numbered. Unimpressed. When the cuffs clicked shut, the dining room inhaled as one body. Outside, reporters gathered. Lights flashed against the windows. Leclerc's curated privacy was swallowed by public attention it couldn't control. And somewhere in the city boardrooms, law firms, distributor offices, phones buzzed with the same message. Pull out. Cancel. Distance. Now. Because status couldn't protect anyone from a recorded truth. By 8:12 a.m. the next morning, Naomi sat in a glass-walled conference room downtown, clean blouse, hair redone, no trace of last night's wine except in the calm hardness of her eyes. Her team had been running the audit for weeks, last night had simply been the final culture check. On the screen behind her, a timeline of evidence ran like a spine: CCTV timestamps, access logs, inventory discrepancies, vendor invoices, witness statements. Not drama. Documentation. Victor arrived late. Not fashionably. Fearfully. His suit was expensive, but it couldn't hide the tremor in his hands as he set his phone down. He'd spent the night calling people who didn't answer, waking up to emails that read like closed doors. He tried charm first. "Naomi, I want to apologize. Personally." Naomi's face didn't change. "Apologies are for accidents," she said. "Last night was a system." Victor swallowed. "Richard is terminated. We're cooperating. We can do a press statement." Naomi raised one finger, not to silence, to stop the lies from spilling. "You're not here for my forgiveness," she said. "You're here because your business is collapsing." Victor's gaze flicked to the screen. "You canceled the deal. That funding was contingent on compliance," Naomi said. "You failed." Her compliance director slid a folder forward. "Mr. Leclerc, these are cause findings. Assault on staff. Retaliation. Improper search demands. Evidence of ongoing fraud." Victor stared at the pages. "I didn't know." Naomi leaned forward slightly. "You owned the building. You set the tone. You benefited from the reputation. You don't get to rent innocence." Victor's old self surfaced, defensive, offended. "So you're going to destroy us?" Naomi's eyes stayed steady. "No," she said. "I'm going to rebuild what you refused to build." The screen changed. Restoration plan. Naomi spoke like a CEO now, not to impress Victor, but because clarity was mercy. "First," she said, "every tipped employee gets a payroll audit and restitution where theft occurred. Tips are wages." Victor started. "That could cost." "It will cost," Naomi corrected. "That's the point." "Second," she continued, "every employee gets independent legal support for retaliation claims. Not your lawyers. An external fund." "A fund?" Victor echoed, weak. "A dignity fund," Naomi said. "For staff in this industry who've been humiliated, underpaid, or threatened into silence." "Third," she added, "training means nothing without enforcement. So we add enforcement, an anonymous reporting line, third-party oversight, automatic review triggers." Victor stared. "You're taking over." Naomi didn't deny it. "I'm taking power away from people who use it like a weapon," she said. In the corner, Marcus stood by the window, silent, careful not to blur the line between husband and bench, between love and law. He wasn't there to save Naomi with his name. He was there to keep the process clean while she moved the world. Victor's eyes dropped to the last line. "Conditional path forward, cooperation plus transparency plus restitution." Naomi's voice softened, not in weakness, but in purpose. "You can fight this," she said. "And you'll lose everything. Or you can cooperate and keep one thing, the chance to do right by the people you ignored." Victor's throat worked. "And Richard?" Naomi's gaze didn't harden. It already was. "Richard faces consequences he earned," she said. "But the employees he threatened? They get something you never gave them." She paused. "A future." The city moved fast when money smelled risk. By the end of the week, Leclerc's dining room looked like a ghost of itself: reservations wiped clean, sponsor logos removed, distributors unavailable, banks reassessing exposure. The name that once sold exclusivity now sold scandal. Richard tried to outrun it. He hired an attorney, posted statements about misunderstandings and stress, blamed Naomi, blamed cancel culture, blamed everyone but the man who raised the bottle. None of it held. Evidence doesn't argue. It exists. Assault charges moved forward. Fraud allegations expanded when the audit confirmed what Ethan had risked everything to say: high-end bottles substituted, invoices manipulated, profit pocketed in a quiet loop that only worked because silence was enforced. The silence broke in layers. A line cook came forward with tip theft complaints. Then a bartender. Then a hostess. Then a server who'd been threatened into signing disciplinary forms for mistakes she never made. Different stories. Same pattern: power used like a boot until people stopped breathing too loudly. Victor tried to salvage his name by offering sacrifice. "We fired him immediately," he told reporters. "We don't tolerate." But Naomi didn't answer with a press conference. She answered with policy, restitution checks, and protections that couldn't be bought off with charm. Ethan was transferred to a partner restaurant with written guarantees: no retaliation, no blacklisting, no quiet punishment for telling the truth. His hand shook when he signed, then steadied. Naomi kept the wine-stained uniform, not hidden. Framed in her office beside her first term sheet, beside a photo of her graduating class, beside a simple line: "Dignity is not a perk. It's a right." When Richard appeared in court, the hallway was packed: reporters, attorneys, former employees, people who had never met Naomi but recognized the moment as something larger than one restaurant. The court filings became public record. The city read them like a mirror it didn't like. Marcus walked beside Naomi, not as a weapon, just as her husband. No threats. No gloating. Only presence. Richard's eyes met Naomi's across the corridor. He looked smaller than he had under the chandeliers. Not because he'd learned humility, because the stage he once controlled had been removed. His mouth opened like he wanted to speak. Naomi stepped forward, close enough that only he could hear. "You didn't need to know who I was," she said, low and steady, "to treat me like a human being." Richard's face tightened: anger, shame, fear fighting for space. Naomi didn't give him another word. She turned and walked away, heels clicking cleanly on the tile, sharp, certain. Not a retreat. Not a victory lap. A conclusion. Outside, cameras flashed. Someone shouted her name. Someone asked for a statement. Naomi didn't stop. Because the statement had already been made on video, in policy, in restitution checks mailed to workers who'd spent years being told they didn't matter. And as she stepped into daylight, the city learned the lesson it always claimed to believe. Justice doesn't need to scream. Sometimes it just needs a woman who refuses to bow. And the courage to make sure the system pays back what it took.